of leaving. There was so much unfinished business for Prabhupada in this world, such as personally seeing to the installation of the deities of Radha Rasbihari in the Bombay temple. Srila Prabhupada admitted it was so and added, another ambition I have is that the populace is suffering from agnosticism. The rascals are suffering, but they do not know why. I want to drive away agnosticism from the world. Tamal Krishna assured Srila Prabhupada that if he were to go to the West, agnosticism would be driven out. The devotees were already working hard on Srila Prabhupada's instruction. But if they could have his physical presence, they would increase their preaching unlimitedly. Tamal Krishna no longer kept himself only in a passive role, waiting for the spiritual master to ring the bell and then waiting to hear what he wanted. Now he was trying to persuade Srila Prabhupada to travel, and as Prabhupada began to consider it, he became enthusiastic. When I am in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada, it is transcendental. That much mercy Krishna has shown me. And wherever there is our center, that is also Vaikuntha, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, or London. Tamal Krishna offered an itinerary, a visit to London, staying at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and also seeing Radha Londonishwar, then to New York and seeing the devotees in the ISKCON skyscraper with Radha Govinda, then to the farm in Pennsylvania, and then to Los Angeles, where he could see the new dioramas of Krishna's pastimes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 17, Text 2. This is a chapter entitled The Descent of the River Ganges. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So I'm reading through the Sanskrit myself, and then we'll go through the word for word translation. Yatraha Bhava Vedavantam Avtanapadayi Paramam Bhagavatam Smatkuna Devata Charanam Vrinda Itiyam Anusadanam Ut Krishnamana Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena Tritam Utyamanantar Hridaya Atkantya Vivasam Vitadu Lochana Vigala Vigavita Malabhashpa Kalaya Vidyajnana Rumakulika Pulakodunapi Paramate Darina Sirasa Vibharti. Please repeat. Yatraha Bhava Indrivaloka
Vedavrata
firmly determined
firmly determined
Uttanapadi the famous son of Maharaj Uttanapad
the famous son of Maharaj Uttanapad
Paramabhagavata
Paramabhagavata
the most exalted devotee
the most exalted devotee
Asmat
our
Kula Devata
Kula Devata
of the family deity
of the family deity
Charana Aravinda
Charana Ravinda
of the lotus feet
of the lotus feet
Udakam
in
in
the water
Iti thus
Yam
which
Anusasvanam
constantly Utkrishtamana being increased Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena by devotional service unto the Lord. Dridam greatly.
Vidyamana
Vidyamana Antaridaya,
Vidyamanantaridaya,
being softened within the core of his heart.
being softened within the core of his heart.
Utkantya,
Utkantya,
by great anxiety.
by great anxiety.
Vivasha,
Vivasa,
spontaneously. Amilita,
Amilita,
slightly open.
slightly open.
Lochana,
Lochana,
of eyes.
of eyes.
Yugala,
Yugala,
pear.
pear.
Pudmala,
Udmala,
from the flower-like.
from the flower-like.
Vigalita,
Vigalita,
emanating. Amala,
Amala,
uncontaminated.
uncontaminated.
Vashpakalaya,
Vashukalaya,
with tears.
with tears.
Abhivyajamana,
Abhivyajamana,
being manifested.
being manifested.
Roma Pulaka,
Roma Pulaka Pulaka,
whose symptoms of ecstasy on the body.
whose symptoms of ecstasy on the body.
Aduna Api,
Aduna Api,
even now.
even now.
Parama Adarena,
Parama Adarena,
with great reverence.
with great reverence.
Shirasa,
Sirasa,
by the head.
by the head.
Vibharti,
Vibharti,
he bears.
he bears.
Translation. Dhruva Maharaj, the famous son of Maharaj Uttanapad, is known as the most exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord because of his firm determination in executing devotional service. Knowing that the sacred Ganges water washes the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, Dhruva Maharaj, situated on his own planet, to this very day accepts that water on his head with great devotion. Because he constantly thinks of Krishna very devoutly within the core of his heart, he is overcome with ecstatic anxiety. Tears flow from his half-opened eyes, and eruptions appear on his entire body. When a person is firmly fixed in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is described as Virat, fully determined. Such a devotee increases his ecstasy in devotional service more and more. Thus, as soon as he remembers Lord Vishnu, his eyes fill with tears. This is a symptom of a Mahabhagavat. Dhruva Maharaj maintained himself in that devotional ecstasy. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also gave us a practical example of transcendental ecstasy when he lived at Jagannath Puri. His pastimes there are fully narrated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the translation again. Dhruva Maharaj, the famous son of Maharaj Uttanapad, is known as the most exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord because of his firm determination in executing devotional service. Knowing that the sacred Ganges water washes the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, Dhruva Maharaj, situated on his own planet to this very day, accepts that water on his head with great devotion, because he constantly thinks of Krishna very devoutly within the core of his heart. He is overcome with ecstatic anxiety. Tears flow from his half-opened eyes, and eruptions appear on his entire body. So, Bhagavatam introduces, mentions Dhruva Maharaj here, and Dhruva Maharaj wasn't always in this exalted transcendental position. As a young boy, the father of a great king and grandson of Lord Brahma, the controller of the universe, universe, then he at the age of 5 years old, he tried to get onto the lap of his father, but his stepmother intervened. The king in those days could have many, the king could have many wives. So the first queen, the king's favorite, she said, "You have no right to be on the lap of your father because you haven't been born of my womb." And even though at 5 years old, he took great offence of this and was so incensed. He went to his mother and for some appealing for some help of some kind and or sympathy, and she gave it, but saying that the only way you can achieve your ambition, because he was so angry that he said he wanted a kingdom better than his father and better than his grandfather, and nothing equaled that in the universe. So his mother told him that he could. This could only be possible if he approached the Supreme Lord. So even as a young boy, 5 years old, he followed his mother's direction to go into the forest and perform austerities. And his austerities were so great that, so determined he was, that Krishna noticed it and sent Narada Muni down to test him and see what this boy was, his ambition was. And so he tested him, saying that, you're only 5 years old. You should be playing with your mates with toys and so on. And the boy, Dhruva Maharaj, said, if you're not going to help me, just don't waste my time. Just I'm determined in this. So he gave him a mantra by which he could fulfill, that he could chant to get the Lord's darshan, for the Lord to appear to him if he was continued with his sincerity and this firm determination. And he did so, and the Lord did appear and ask him what he wanted. But on seeing the Lord, he was so struck by his beauty and his presence that he couldn't speak. He was just dumbfounded. And so what the Lord did was, he was carrying his conch shell, and he touched the boy Dhruva with his conch shell, and that transcendental touch awakened his spiritual senses, and he was able to offer so many words of glorification of the Lord. He was brought up as a devotee, so it's not that he had a background of training in hearing pastimes of Krishna and so on. So but then he said, on seeing you, his famous words are that on seeing you, I was just looking for broken glass, but now I've found a diamond. So I don't want that kingdom anymore. Now that I've found you, I'm fully satisfied. But the Lord insisted that he fulfill his desire. So thus it says here how Dhruva Maharaj situated on his own planet, which is known as the pole star, and within this world. I like that. So So his approach to the Lord is mentioned as one of the four types of persons that are pious that approach the Lord. One is that one approaches the Lord for relief from distress. One approaches the Lord due to a desire for opulence, as in the case of Dhruva Maharaj. Others approach the Lord with a mood of inquisitiveness, and the example of these are the four Kumaras, the four boy sages, and this rare soul that approaches the Lord wanting to know the absolute truth. And this is exemplified by Parikshit Maharaj, who's asking the questions here in this Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is basically a conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami. And within that conversation, so many other conversations are recited, and pastimes are given of the Lord and his devotees. So, so by this approach to the Lord, for wanting to have some relief, then the Lord gives the arrangement where devotees can have the association of pure devotees who can help them step on the path of devotional service. Then it's a gradual process of being detached from the material concept of life to adopting one's original constitutional position as a soul, as the spiritual living entity, in union with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this is a process of cleansing of the heart, so that one comes to the point where one's spiritual senses are active in that relationship, divine relationship. So on the material platform, the soul conditioned by the association by material energy, he considers his body, mind, and senses as a field for enjoyment, and engages in eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and so on, like this. But when one adopts the practice of devotional service, one accepts one's constitutional position, one's nature as a servant, and directs that service to Krishna. First of all, by the tongue, by vibrating the spiritual sound vibrations of his holy names, and Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and also taking foodstuffs that have been sanctified as an offering to him. So there's one verse that describes this: Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavat Nilavapanam Shirkaravya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vidu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Patiputam Purnam Vajasvardhanam Savatmasnapanam Parambhajayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. And this translates as glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy names. Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to easily taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. So, extinguishes the fire of conditioned life of repeated birth and death. So there's so many problems in the world, but the one thing that can solve all the problems is by not coming back here to this material world, to endure so many, to be vulnerable to all sorts of suffering. So that's why in the Krishna conscious movement, its main purpose is to help people cleanse their hearts so that they become eligible to leave this world once and for all. But this isn't a kind of mundane thing. It's helps us. It's a process that helps us come to the point where Dhruva Maharaj is here, because he thinks of Krishna very devoutly within the core of his heart. He's overcome with ecstatic anxiety. Tears flow from his half-open eyes, and eruptions appear on his entire body. So this is where a soul that's ceased his material existence and is active on the spiritual platform, his spiritual senses, his mind, intelligence, and so on, are all active in his relationship with Krishna, offering his mind and words and his deeds in service to the Lord. And for the living entity, this is considered real life, because he comes back to his original nature of eternity in complete bliss and in perfect knowledge, just by that association with the Lord in love. Because with him being determined, his firm determination in serving the Lord isn't an ingrate or some inanimate object that one is devoting one's self to. He's called the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he's the best person we could ever wish to meet. If we see look at the person we love the most, the qualities, the things they do that attract us. If you can multiply that but 1,000,000 times, and it still won't come near to the how great Krishna is in his qualities and in his personality. So that's why just by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, one can get a glimpse of that transcendental relationship, and because the Lord reciprocates with that determination according to how determined one is, then the Lord reciprocates. So the more we become absorbed in that sound vibration, the mind will wander, as natural, but the more as one continues with determination to make it a steady practice, and one experiences the Lord's reciprocation, and one becomes inspired. Because when one's engaged in one's relationship with God, it's not and the wealth of that comes with it, it's not something that can be seen externally. Someone who's wealthy materially, it's manifest with a big house, jewelry, or opulence, and being able to travel here and there, becomes famous, known as a great personality in that way in material circles. But the opulence of a devotee is
within, internal. And it's seen in their behavior and how they respond in difficult circumstances, that they can remain equiposed even in very trying circumstances. There was one time when Prabhupada, he was in a car crash, but the devotees noticed that he kind of braced himself, having his cane, leaning on his cane, and his legs crossed in the back seat there. And the accident happened, but he hardly made any mention of it at all. He had some cuts and so on, but his main absorption, he had his mind fixed on his next appointment in his service to the Lord, because he knew that's the only thing that mattered. Because we can achieve so many things on the material platform, but the one thing that'll stay for us eternally is our relationship with Krishna. So the more we engage in that relationship during our lifetime, then we see that we can experience that come to a point where we experience that we're never alone. So having these experiences that Krishna looks out for us, he makes arrangements for us for our welfare materially and as well as spiritually, then come the time of death, we have no fear. Because no one can help us at the time of death in alleviating our suffering, and it's a time where we leave everything we know and love behind. So for materialists, that's the most devastating thing, because he has nothing else. And so it's just being, it's bad enough being you're in your house and someone burgles your house and takes something of great sentimental value, and that can be very kind of traumatic experience. Just somebody, a stranger, just invading your space. But what it must be like when you're being the one that's forcibly taken away from your what you've built up around you. So only the devotee can remain equipoised in this situation, and being strong in his relationship with the Lord. So this is what we're being encouraged to do, to be fully determined in our determination, in our endeavor to come to this point where we don't have no attachment for the material. We've got to keep body and soul together and meet the bodily demands, of course, like eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but not that we see it as the all in all. And the more we are engaged in that relationship, a loving relationship with Krishna, like we do our service, we want to do it the best we can, and we want to please. So the more we're fixed in that way, then it's easier to make the sacrifices that are there to detach that, just by that attraction to do the service, then automatically we become detached from matter or materialistic concepts of life. The more when we engage in devotional service, the more we and gain an attraction, then the less we are attracted to the so-called opulences of this world. We don't see them as opulences anymore. We see the real treasure as this relationship we have with Krishna, and this is what the real purpose of yoga is. It's not to be able to do some gymnastic feat, or make the body so agile it can be unhealthy in that way. Or as some yogis do, they perform some austerities in this yoga practice, Ashtanga yoga practice, and be able to attain powers, different mystic cities, mystic powers. But then this is this is not the real fruit of yoga. It still keeps one on the material platform. Whereas this transcendental pleasure that's experienced in relationship with the Lord is something far beyond that. So I'll read a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which illustrates this to some degree. This is chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, text 20 to 23. In the stage of perfection, called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. So to see the self and by pure mind to relish and rejoice in the self means that one's mind is so pure that one can see one's own self, but also the super self within the heart. The soul is always accompanied by Krishna within the heart. And to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So, and I'll also read something that a nice story I read, which also illustrates how one is when one is established in devotional service, being Krishna conscious, seeing Krishna in every circumstance, and is conscious of how Krishna is making arrangements for his purification of the mind, so that he can see the real self as himself as the spiritual being. So that he sees that everything that's happening to him is Krishna's direct intervention. So once upon a time, a spiritual teacher was explaining to a class of young students that devotees who have love for God can be joyful in all situations of life. In Bhagavad Gita 6.22, Lord Krishna says, when a devotee develops love of God, he experiences unlimited spiritual happiness through his spiritual senses. Upon gaining this, he thinks that there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest calamity. The students were very eager to know how one can reach a state where one is peaceful within, in spite of difficulties and challenges all around. The spiritual teacher thought of an idea to teach them the quality of joyful living. He told the students the best person to answer this question is the old man living in the small cottage at the bank of the river. The spiritual teacher then explained to the students that the old man had lost his parents when he was a child. He had to work every day to pay for his and his younger brother's school fees. His brother became an engineer, went abroad, married an American girl, and completely forgot this old man's gifts and sacrifices. When he was about 35 years, he lost both his legs in an accident, so his wife divorced him, took both the children, never to return. Since then, he has been on a wheelchair, living in this small cottage and worshipping the Supreme Lord with whatever little money he has. The children were moved to hear the story. The next day, all the students went to the river for a picnic. After much searching, they found the small cottage of the old man. When they knocked on the cottage door, the elderly gentleman on a wheelchair opened it and welcomed the students with a beaming smile. They submitted their question to the old man: how can one remain peaceful and happy in spite of problems and challenges all around? Our teacher has said that you've had many, many difficulties your whole life, so you are the best person to answer this question. The old man, with smiling lips and sparkling eyes, now had a surprise on his face. He said, "My dear children, I think you've got the wrong address. There were no problems in my life. I only had so many opportunities to learn lessons to enrich my life. For this reason, I am deeply grateful to my Lord for these life-shaping events which have brought me closer to his lotus feet." Seeing the genuine devotion of the old man, the students were stunned in disbelief. In his brief answer, he had spoken volumes of wisdom. Carrying the deep impression of the old man's love for Krishna in their hearts, they returned home. From that day, instead of cribbing, crying, and complaining, they were more patient of others, tolerant, grateful to the Lord for his every blessing, and shared his compassionate affection with everyone they met. So we can go through some difficulties, but it's usually in hindsight that we see what gifts that difficulty has given us. Basically, we're being encouraged to persevere so that we can see this exalted goal as something worth endeavoring for, and be able to, with our spiritual practices, become strong in the face of any difficulty. So any questions or comments you'd like to ask?
Thank you very much for bringing up many nice points. Just that story of the old man. I was just thinking that actually when we were reading in the Prabhupada Amrita, Srila Prabhupada speaking the time of Krishna, and Srila Prabhupada said he wanted to eliminate agnosticism from the world. So even though Srila Prabhupada throughout his life had always accepted whatever personal difficulties he encountered as being Krishna's mercy, but now he was taking on the seemingly impossible task of helping the whole world without agnosticism. So it would seem that the purity devotee is always going to be anxiety, because there's paradukha. He doesn't have any anxiety for himself, because he realizes that whatever difficulties he experiences in his life, he feels it's a result of his past karma, or it's something that Krishna is giving to him to help him learn something. But then when it comes to wanting to help the whole world, and you just take on a massive burden. So I was just thinking, in the case of the old man, when he lost both of his legs and his wife left him with his two children, how would he have been able? He could have gradually been able to see that as Krishna's mercy upon him. But how would he give up the anxiety for his children? Because generally, a woman the fact that she was married to him, and he was like a nice person, and then he let them. So how was he able to give up that anxiety for those responsibilities that he was no longer able to fulfill?
First and foremost, he can only do what's within his power to do. So, and that's basically working on himself. If he has there's no way of that he can, he didn't know where they were to even help them. So, the only thing, knowing that Krishna's in control, he could only pray and leave them in his hands. And there's that benediction by Lord Nrsimhadev. When one becomes a pure devotee, then the Lord not only delivers him, but also his generations before him and after him. So they become delivered also. Also, by establishing oneself in service to Krishna, he's the supreme controller, he's the Lord of everything, and he's everyone's best friend. So if we please him, then he can mercifully assist, fulfill our desires, like we pray for people in their sickness sometimes, or there's ongoing spiritual journey if they're on their deathbed like this, and the Lord listens to our prayers. And he wants their eternal spiritual welfare also. Is that answering your question?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not expecting there to be an easy answer to it. I was just wanting to hear your thoughts on it. I understand that's the nature of the devotee, is he feels in happiness. He feels in happiness for the suffering of others. So in that sense, that's that doesn't mean externally it may seem that the person is not on Dharma's transcendental happiness because he's taking on the burden of other people's unhappiness.
Well, he's only
the joy that of one experiences in one's relationship with Krishna is so great that you want everyone to have it. And because you see people, like someone in that position, and they see someone trying to be happy by drinking or smoking, it's like you see that as they're suffering, but they're an illusion that they're thinking they're happy by this, but it's just like Dhruva Maharaj is saying, broken bits of glass, trying to be happy with broken bits of glass. So he feels so much compassion that, like Prabhupada, he was driving by a golf course and seeing these people playing golf. And the devotees noticed that he's crying. He's saying, they're just wasting their life. Just wasting their life. In the human form of life, it's the only form of life where one can has the intelligence and the faculties to be able to step onto this transcendental spiritual platform. In no other form of life can one do so. So the devotee does his best to be able to share that Krishna consciousness with others in a way that they can understand, so that they can step on the path that leads to this joy. And whatever he does to do that, he knows that he's not only pleased that person, but he's pleased Krishna, because the Krishna is most pleased when one tries to share him with others. Because like you may be able to, it's like if you may be able to give a donation or feed someone for a day, but if you can give them the means of how to sustain themselves for their whole life, then that's even better. So similarly, if one gives knowledge of Krishna, then one can overcome all sorts of obstacles in life. So it's a treasure that's unparalleled. And that's why it says in the verse, upon gaining this, there's no greater gain. But we won't be able to understand that unless we're on that platform ourselves, or unless we're practicing ourselves and get a glimpse by really kind of a serious practice. And serious for one person, maybe, like for example, just read just a few mantras a day is a good start. And then as one practices, one has the desire to increase because of that reciprocation one's getting from Krishna, that it's not can't be viewed externally, it's an internal experience. So it's a beginning of one's internal life within.
And that's how one doesn't have
To be rich or rich to be able to offer many nice things to Krishna. One can even mentally do so, and it has as much benefit. Is that okay? Any other?
Just read out a comment online by Laura. So she says, we need to be thankful for the calamities and see Krishna's hand in everything that happens, however difficult as we are going through them. They are there to learn and grow from.
That's correct. But because we're
Practicing devotees, and then we need strength to continue, especially during those hard times. And that strength comes from devotee association, how we can share up, problem shared is a problem halved. Those share with those who are like-minded by reading and chanting the holy name. These are our pillars of strength that help us through these difficulties, because we can't do it on our own. We're kind of an insignificant spark in the vast material energy. So we need to really hold on to our anchors to be able to steer us through these difficulties, because otherwise it's easier said than done, or it is easier said than done. So the more we experience overcoming hurdles, then and so receiving Krishna's reciprocation, how we get some realization afterwards, how it's the lesson we were meant to learn from this, from that, and so on. Then the more that happens, then the more we see it as something that's valuable, that's worth striving for, then and it's what we really want, then Krishna will give it. He fulfills the desires of all living entities, but if we want something material, then we get something material. For example, if we're on our deathbed and we're missing something of this world, Krishna's fine with that, and he'll bring us back here to be able to fulfill that desire. But if we want him and him only, knowing that he's the greatest, he's the diamond worth striving for, then we'll go back to him, and that means going back to an atmosphere where every word is a song, every step is a dance, every day is a festival. Just like you see children, they're dancing around, they're happy, have no cares in the world, when when they're happy, they put their hands in the air and like this. And for ourselves, that's what happens when we're in complete Krishna consciousness. That joy is there of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Any reflection? Any other comments or reflections? Is there any that you can share, Simona?
Yeah, I was thinking about the story of the old man had troubles in his life, but he didn't consider his trouble. And when he doesn't have any expectations, living in nature and in relation with God, everything becomes easier. But being engaged in material world, where all the people around you are in material world, it's like how can you escape this? Because so many people are suffering in material world, and they would like a window or a door to get out of this, but they don't have the information or a support system to do that. So for those people, how can this information get to them better?
The way we conduct ourselves. Example is the best precept. When they see, like, there's a difficult situation at work and they see you're calm and you're extending yourself in a compassionate way, then eventually, these things, they see this happening on a kind of regular basis where you come in, day out, and you seem to just get on with your work and don't seem to be fazed by different things and so on. Then they'll come to you. What is to know your secret? And if they know that you're practicing Krishna consciousness, they may see you, but then they may see another devotee and think, well, I have this friend here. Why, what is it that makes them tick and be able to be so cool, If it was me, I'd be this, that, whatever, So, the example is the best precept. We can share knowledge as well, but we have to know what they're willing to accept, because we can't give them the whole thing. It'd be too much over their head and put them off maybe. So the best is our example, and either wait till they ask questions or have certain things, like a devotee was saying that she has a picture on her next to a computer, or I forget who it was, a picture next to the computer, or we have maybe Bhagavad Gita there or some book or something, and it gives them a cue to, what's this? And why do you read this book? What's in here? And it gives you an opening to be able to share. And when you do so, it's so exhilarating. You feel so exhilarated and so uplifted, because Krishna in the heart is so pleased. This is the way the devotee experience happiness, is that he doesn't try to directly enjoy, but he tries to please Krishna, and this way Krishna's pleased, and enjoying, and so he feels that pleasure within his own heart. So happiness comes from within. That strength comes from within. That wealth is within. And as we practice it day by day, it's just like a drop on a stone, but it makes an impression. And if for some reason, circumstances, situations have stopped the process, then whatever we've gained by the practice that we've done is never lost. The next lifetime, we'll be able to take up where we'll be given the chance to take up where we left off. but it's advised to just try and do it in one life, because in the next life, you don't know, things may be so traumatic for you that chance may come and you may ignore it. Or you may be so wealthy and intoxicated by your wealth that the opportunity comes like a devotee to your door and you tell them, not interested, I'm happy. No, I'm all right, thank you. That's what many people say when you knock on their doors. Oh, I'm okay, thank you. I've given my 10p in the box to somewhere else or whatever. As if that's going to solve the problems of the world, So the devotee knows that whatever he puts out there, the more people are putting Krishna consciousness out there, the more the atmosphere will change. Just like when people visit here, they think, wow, it's so peaceful here. And especially when they come into the temple room, there's been the hub of spiritual activity. It has an effect. So the more we practice it, the more we have an aura about us as well. That people feel just for no reason, they can't think why, but they just feel comfortable in your presence.
Just some comments from Laura. So in relation to her first comment, when you mentioned on the associations, she's agreeing. She says yes, we cannot do it alone. And then a comment from her, I pray to remain in the shelter of the Vaishnavis. Your knowledge and guidance is so helpful.
And that association
online, there's so much online now that if we know something that's helped us, then we can direct them towards that as well. Because we can give them so much, but we can show them to somewhere or some association online that will give them more information, maybe in a way that they can relate to. Where there's a will, there's a way. Krishna, it's funny how Krishna can equip us. He can make us equipped to be able to share. He knows in advance that some soul's going to come and meet you and want some direction, or that someone's there that's maybe you're in that situation for a reason, because Krishna wants certain people back on the path. He wants to give their mercy to them, and he's given their mercy through you. It always comes via a devotee. Krishna make arrangements, but he uses us as instruments. And in this way, we get so much benefit. We come closer to Krishna, or become dearmost to Krishna also. And it's a very nice, it's very comforting to know that in a time of distressing or stressful situations. And to know that these things do happen for a reason, so we can pray for, if we don't understand, we can pray for the understanding. If we don't feel we're fully determined, as it says here, then we can pray for that determination. And if we don't really want to pray for the determination, we can pray to be able to pray for the determination. There's always some way we can just embark on it, and to be on target for Krishna's mercy. So is that okay? Any reflections of that? Okay. Still digesting it. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention. ISKCON Guru Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Devi Dasi ki jai.